Okay, well, welcome to Tom's Guitar Show. I'm Tom. They call me Guitar Tom because I'm often seen with a guitar. They call me up on the phone. They ask me. They say, "Hey, man, what's your show about anyway?" I say, "Well, it's about an hour about guitar players, guitar playing, guitars, all things guitaristic, really. You want to talk about a related topic, like, like how to play your guitar, the care and feeding of your guitar, what kind of guitar is right for you." We'll talk about something else like guitarrons, guitars, sitars, lutes, ouds, vihuelas, chicholas, banjos, balalaikas, bouzouki, bajos, sextos, tiples, cavaquinhos, ukuleles, banjolins, bandoras, mandolins, mandolas, harmoniums, harpsichords, harmonicas, clarinets, clavinets, A, B flat, and C clarinets, bassoons, French horns, English horns, cornets, trombones, trumpets, trombamarinas, violins, violas, viola d'amores, cellos, bass fiddles, viola gambas, viola bracas, pipe organs, piccolos, sackbuts, saxophones.
And the English horn is neither English nor horn.
That's right. That's how things go, isn't it? Isn't a bassoon also called a fagot? There's this beautiful piece. I think it's Miguel Yobé. No, it's not. It's was it Julian Arcas? El Fagot. Anyway, anything musical's fine. Politics, world events, your own personality problems. We're here for you, but keep it clean. This is a family program. Anyway, so I got my big jazz box this week. I've been fooling around with different guitars, and I've had this one for, well, at least 15 years. Played a lot of gigs with this guitar. It's just a big workhorse, a big durable, big fat jazz box. I guess they get bigger and fatter, but this is probably big and fat enough for me. I'm going to mention this often during this show. We have once a month we have a coffee house show upstairs at Uptown Bill's. I guess it'll be a couple weeks before we have one here, week after next, the March episode of it. But in the April episode, I want to make a great big classical guitar showing. So I'm going to try to beat the bushes, and certainly my own classical guitar students will be there in force. But anybody else who plays classical guitar in the community who would like to be on Tom's Guitar Show at Uptown Bill's Coffee House, you should you can contact me. My website, of course, is allthingsguitartom.com. You can also contact PATV or Uptown Bill's Coffee House, and you can get through to me somehow. But I guess what I'm nattering out about is I'm looking for some more classical guitarists, or people who play at least some classical guitar. And I'm also, anybody who wants to go there, and if you like classical guitar music, which I tell you, that's probably I think that's the best guitar. I mean, you know, I think it's the, like, well, I was talking to my wife about this, and the thing about she's heard a lot of different kinds of guitar music, you know, because, let's face it, there's a lot of guitar music happening at our house, you know, and between my own banging away at them and the students who come, and the occasional rehearsals and so forth. But, you know, the thing about the classical thing is it's more like there's a lot more mind behind it, a lot more, you know, not to denigrate any of the folk styles or popular styles, but the classical guitar is like intellectually really deep. And what I always think is the classical guitar is a small wooden box, you know, and normally not amplified. And what you hear is like a protrusion, like the tip of the iceberg of a deep thought. And it's like really intense. So I'm going to dedicate the month of April is going to have a lot of classical guitar in it here on Tom's Guitar Show. You know, the culmination will be the last, I think it's the 29th of April, I think is the date. And that'll be the Uptown Bill's Coffee House show. So next month, expect to see more classical guitar behavior on this show in general, but there will be, there will be a classical guitar event. And I'm actually going to go up right after the show. I'm going to run upstairs and talk to young Tom, who runs the place up there. I hope he's there, and the job is still kicking there, about having us extend our stay there for an extra hour. It's very possible that the second hour of this performance will not be televised. But I was thinking that people who can only play a couple of songs because of the time constraints of having how you say in your country, a 1 hour show, could play in the second hour. And also people who aren't quite ready to perform as such will be, they'll get a chance to play for maybe a small but friendly audience. I have these ambitions, you know. I would like to put together a classical guitar quartet, possibly an orchestra, to do things. Some of us have fooled around with that notion a few times. there are things that, for instance, you could transcribe orchestral music and then have guitars or related instruments like string bass and mandolin and whatever in a plectrum group. Sorry. I didn't even have enough sleep last night. I'm boring myself. Anyway, so I like to play stuff. I mean, there's a Vivaldi Mandolin Concerto in C. So I would like to play that concerto with the mandolin. Mandolin is playing the first mandolin and playing the mandolin solo, and then have the mandolinist play the first violin part. Maybe another mandolinist play the second violin part. Perhaps a guitar player could play that. Certainly the viola and cello parts would be played by guitar players, and then the bass would be played by a string bass player. Get them all up there in the stage, and we would play the Vivaldi Mandolin Concerto in C with nothing but plectrum instruments. I think plucking away. I think it would be a lot of fun. These are my dreams and ambitions. They don't hurt anybody. They don't have a huge carbon footprint. Obviously, these instruments had to be made out of wood, but a lot of times the tree was cut down a really long time ago, and then there's the strings, of course. Some of them are steel and some are nylon and that. But basically, compared to like a monster truck or tractor pull type events, there's very little carbon footprint, and nobody gets hurt. All we're doing is like subtly changing air pressure slightly by having air moving in and out of sound holes. Anyway. So I'm just going to mention this frequently until the event. I hope a bunch of people show up. So this Saturday, I'm going to go to Cedar Rapids. I'm supposed to judge in a music competition they're having. I guess they're hosting it at the Kirkwood Community College, and I thought classical guitar at Kirkwood, but I guess it's a statewide thing. They needed a classical guitar. Somebody knew something about classical guitar to judge, I think I know a fair amount about the classical guitar and and stuff. I certainly played a bunch of it, and have a big collection of music at home that I read through and stuff, and because they give you the music, and you're supposed to go through it with a red pen and then rate the guitarists, and then give them and then somebody will win, a trophy. But I'm not looking forward to it because I'm interested in classical guitar, but I'm not interested in criticism, being a critic. So it might be difficult, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because why not? Anyway. Well, speaking of simpler music, I almost never play this song because I learned it in 7th grade. So sometimes I play that and just the guitar buzzes. People really respond to it. And you know, I never think about it, but it means things to people. I don't think people know what the song's about, of course, but it brings back happy memories to some. The Animals did it way back when. I think they're an English band, but it's a folk song. It goes back to the 19th century, I believe. Yeah, so I decided to bring this one along with me too. This is also blonde, much newer guitar. I haven't had this paid off for nearly as long. It's paid off though. This is a DBZ Bolero, and it's not buzzing. I turned down a little bit. This pickup is hot. Turn down even more. Yeah. My problem with some of these guitars is when I sit in this one particular stool, the cord, the cable, it bumps into my leg. I need to have a right angle. I know, first world problems. Some people don't even have a guitar. Some people have an electric guitar but no amp. Some people have an electric guitar and an amp, but they don't have a cord to plug it into the amp. Well, maybe I'll tweak this. Let's see if I go over here. How about if I do? Oops. Well. The thing about this amp is it has all this modeling and effects built into it, and although I mean I can get a better sound if I use just a big amp and then fool around with pedals, get different pedals to put different sounds in it. It sure is handy to have one relatively inexpensive solid state amp I can just throw in the car, and but then I have to twiddle the knobs and get them just right. So I don't know, I keep looking for the right amp, and I had this one amp that was just great for doing two things, and it was an acoustic guitar amp. It was made in near Des Moines, Iowa. They're now being made in China, by the way, but see, I'm reminiscing, excuse me, but the ultrasound amps, they're made in Waukee, I believe, which is used to be a little farm town, but now it's a suburb of Des Moines, basically. And so I got this amp, 12 years ago, maybe more, and for years, maybe 10 years, I took it out and plugged it in somewhere, maybe 4 days a week, 5 days a week, every week, a couple hundred times a year. Tom's Guitar Show and various other gigs. It had a really good direct out, so you could plug it into the PA system in a larger club or something. And then it started making nasty noises, so I sent it back to Waukee, and they fixed it, and sort of, and then it was making the noise again, but then it stopped making the noise, and I got another like 6 months of bliss with it, but and then it's now it makes terrible noises, and I don't know what to do, if I should try to get it fixed again or what, because it's they wear out eventually. So if I play like 200 gigs with it for 10 years, that's 2,000 gigs, and that would be the minimum that I played with this amp. So, but what it did really well was electric nylon string guitar, like the electric flamenco guitar, which was my gig guitar for 10 years, but it folded up. It couldn't handle the stress anymore, and then I also played this big blonde jazz box through it, And my other jazz box that I use, a black one that I use, Schecter Jazz 6. And it, anyway, it was great. But times change. And as I say, they make the same. They make that amp, but they make it in China now, and it's not the same amp. It's pretty good, you know. But I don't really want one. So having that amp, you know, die on me, has caused me to do this this odyssey of trying to find that sound again. Because it used to be the sound was very easy for me to find. I just plugged into one amp, and I twiddled the knobs a little bit, and there it was. If I had to play in a big place with a PA system, I just plugged it in the back to the direct out and plugged that into the PA system, and I got my beautiful sound piped in through a large room. In a small room, I would just play through the amp itself. In extreme cases, I would put that amp on top of a keyboard amp and, you know, and then just, you know, get the sound coming out of the amp and put it into a much bigger amp, and so I could, anyway. So here I am, still searching, you know. It's like one of those things, you know. It's the arc of a story, you know. You find the perfect thing, and be it a, you know, that maybe the perfect relationship, you know. And then you lose it, and you spend the rest of the story trying to get it back. So my main gig amp and my main gig guitar are no longer in commission. And here I am. I'm continuing on. If you know me back in the old days, you would never, you would seldom have seen me without my faithful companion, the dog, Professor Pangloss. He and I, we traveled. Played gigs and stinking bars. Sometimes I'd take my dog in with me if I could. Back in the old days, I played Stone City when he was a puppy, and he would lie there and sleep on the stage while I was playing my gig and stuff. So my choices of what kind of car I would drive and everything, what would be a comfortable car for a dog. So the station wagon or a full-size van. Make sure you had his bowl of water and you had some dog food along for the ride, and you know, and then we'd. Some people think it's cruel to keep your dog in the car, but if you never keep the dog, if it's not in the sun, like if it's at night, you're a guitar player and it's night, the dog's not going to overheat in the car, and if it's not terribly cold, the dog has a fur coat and he's okay, you know, in the coolness, and of course. Yeah, he has a bunch of opportunities to sniff around other cities. He swam in Lake Michigan. I think he enjoyed that. He swam in the Mississippi. He swam everywhere where he got a chance, which was not necessarily what I wanted, because he'd swim in a swamp, and then he'd have this swampy dog with 100 pounds of dog with long hair and algae hanging off of him. But I think he had a fairly good life. But of course, 14 is really old for a big dog, and he went deaf, and his hips went out on him, and so. But I persevere. While the dogs I left behind. find myself conflating guitars and dogs. But anyway, sorry.
Oh, that's a perfect blend, actually. Yes, I'm amiss, and I need to apologize. I think last week we talked about that it was my homework assignment to A, B flat, and C clarinets
Yeah.
by there, and I completely forgot about it.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll do that next week or on a future show. We won't do it at Uptown Bills, of course, but we'll do it here in the studio. But I will follow up on that. Another thing that I'm amiss about is a friend of mine from back east who has a very sophisticated knowledge of music sent me a link of and perhaps you know this person. I should have just printed it off when I read the email, but an obituary of a noted, I believe, primarily known for flamenco guitar. He was a Spaniard, I believe, because, yeah, I think that's where he died. And he passed away last week. Wasn't real old. I'm thinking 60s or something, if I can remember. And I apologize, I don't have the name, but that's...
I don't know who it is, yeah.
And my friend said that he had actually seen him perform years ago, probably, well, it would be in New York. So he had an international reputation. He said it was one of the best guitar concerts he had ever attended.
Well, it wasn't Paco Peña, was it?
No,
Oh,
no,
good,
no,
good.
no. It was, I'm thinking, they had his picture, and I don't know how recent the picture was in the obituary, but he didn't look that old, and I don't, it seems to me he wasn't that old. He was maybe in his 60s or something. But I will, as soon as I get a chance, I will print off that obituary, and then I'll also bring that in next week.
Yeah,
So
that would be...
I apologize for doubly being amiss on my duties here, but
We can all forget things, but yeah,
Yes.
I'd like to find out who that was. Huh.
and of course we don't have Bob here with his laptop, with which we could make a quick thing. But I'll have that information for you next week, because it's 2 weeks yet before we do Uptown Bills, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll have that for next week. I'll put that on my things to do.
All right.
You know, we're an ongoing show. We've got plenty of time. How many years and how many shows do you estimate?
Well, it's going on 20 years, and it's around 50 shows a year. But it's less than both of those. So if it were, the maximum thing would be, say, 50 times 20, it would be 1,000. But it's a little less than that. But I mean, it's probably at least 900 though, for sure. I mean, because I don't know how many shows we don't, because they usually close down for a couple weeks in the winter, and maybe another time during the year they close down for a week or so, in the summer or something. So it's possible that I lose 3 shows a year. And
Yeah, but you personally do not miss shows. My goodness, you've got a great track record.
Yeah.
You outdo both Phil and I.
yeah,
So, yeah, but so we, barring the unexpected, which could happen to any of us at any time, we do have kind of an infinite horizon on this show. So if we don't get to something one week, we can get it on another week. So if any listener or viewers out there, if we've mentioned a topic and we've never followed up on it, maybe just email Tom or call the show here, and we'll get around to it. We'll follow up, because I know I've been on the viewing end from time to time, and people say, well, we're going to talk about this in the next segment, and they never do, and you're kind of disappointed. So, and not only that, but any other questions about music or whatever, as always. And that reminds me, an acquaintance of mine who's taken up an interest in the guitar, he had a question about a couple of different types of pickups, and I wrote that down at home, and then, of course, that's sitting at home somewhere. So that's a third topic.
is he perhaps humbuckers and single coil, or was it? That's usually the big one.
Something along those lines, but I'd better grab that paper just to make sure, so that we do we cover what he was interested in knowing about. And then a fourth topic down the road, and I might even grab some video off of YouTube, and maybe a little 2 or 3 minute cut. I've gotten very interested in the singer Abby Lane. I know on this show, one of your frequent numbers that you perform is Cry Me a River by Julie London, and Abby Lane is a rough contemporary of Julie London.
Yeah, it's funny. I must have just come across her, and somebody was saying that she was like a contemporary of Julie London, And I don't think it was you. I think it was like on my iPod or something.
Oh, really?
Like something I
Because
just
we
like.
talked about this last week after the show, not on the
Yeah,
air.
okay. But I think I'd already, or somehow I came upon her. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and she's an amazing singer, amazing performer, very classy woman. She's still living. She's 81 years old, and there's an interview of her on YouTube, and it's recent, within the last couple of years. And I haven't actually looked at that yet. Unfortunately, from what I'm seeing on the comments, she talks a lot about, or not so much her, but the interviewer seemed to be mostly interested in her personal history. She was married to Xavier Cugat for 12 years, and they had kind of a scandalous divorce. And unfortunately, there's a very scant Wikipedia article about her, and a lot of it has to do with her scandalous relationship with
Okay, so
Cugat.
people are interested in not her art, but her.
Exactly, but there's so much to her art, and she went on after she divorced Cugat, or he divorced her. She remarried in 1964, and I believe her husband's still living, which means this year will be their 50th wedding anniversary, which is classy. But yeah, I'm starting to wondering if I could contact her, and wouldn't that be a nice interview to get? But
Yeah.
I would focus on her musical life,
Right.
and her acting, because she was a talented actress, and I have like 10 to 20 questions off the top of my head I would like to ask her about her singing. Why did she do this in a particular song? What kind of formal training may she have had? There's just a lot there. She's one of those American artists who seem to be more appreciated in Europe, and more widely known in Europe. Not that she's entirely unknown here in the States, but she's very much associated with Cugat, for whom she used to sing, and they did. And she spoke fluent Spanish and spoke fluent Italian also, and. So yeah, we're going to have to follow up on that, and I'll come up with maybe it wouldn't be more than 5 minutes, some sample clips from, because there's some stuff on YouTube, like old television shows. She was on TV a lot in the 60s, like Hollywood Palace and things like that, and wonderful, very classy, respectable singer that we need to know more about. So, and since we disseminate musical information on Tom's Guitar Show, it's something for us to look into.
Actually, that was one of my ambitions. Years ago, I wanted to have a PBS show, one of those Saturday afternoon shows, and try to jump from this to that, like years ago. And one thing I wanted to do is to find musicians that interviews would always ask them questions about their personal lives or something like that, and I would like to ask them about their music and not even mention any of their personal issues.
Exactly.
People from back in the day or whatever like that. And the things that interviewers, because the reason I started this show is because I didn't like a lot of stuff that was happening on TV. First was MTV, which was the reason I started this show was MTV, because I was, my narrative is that when I was a young fellow, turned 25 in California, and then it was the very beginning of MTV, and I was playing a gig in Mill Valley, California, at Alibaba's Cafe, or maybe it was the Resch House. I think the Resch House was the back room of Alibaba's Cafe, and they had a big screen TV, which was not that common in those days, and a projection TV, and then
I remember those, yeah.
Yeah, and then the 49ers won the Super Bowl that day. My birthday fell on Super Bowl Sunday, and I had a gig. So after Super Bowl was over, I played my gig. And then that was when they invented the White Zinfandel, which is not respected. I know from people around me. It seemed like people really liked it. Maybe it was better in those days. I don't know, but it's like soda pop. People won't, the places where I play, you can't even say White Zinfandel because they'll start going anyway. But that was new in those days, and so somebody brought in several cases of this White Zinfandel, and there was wine, and I was playing, and then there were a couple of producers from MTV who were in the audience of this thing that I was playing at. And it's my 25th birthday. And my parents had sent me a suit, but I didn't have any fancy shoes, so I had my limited resources. I went and bought a pair of white canvas sneakers, Converse type sneakers. I think they were Keds, actually. And so I had my white sneakers and my suit. And anyway, so they said, get your thing together. Maybe we can, the guy who got me the gig talked to these guys. I didn't actually meet the people, but he said, they said get my act together, and maybe I could do some stuff with MTV. And I had all these artistic, dreams of playing really exciting fingerstyle guitar music, and maybe mounting a camera low on a motorcycle and going on Highway 1 north of San Francisco, which winds along the coast, and it winds along over the steep cliffs overlooking the ocean, Pacific Ocean. But what ended up was like videos by the Cars, and maybe people like the Cars, but the Cars, like pencil-necked, kind of geeky guys, and really pretty girls wearing very short shorts and leaning on shiny cars that were built in the 1950s. And the guys singing like that, being kind of weird. I thought, this is not. I had these dreams of, this really deep, wonderful music that I was hoping to do. So that's why I started Tom's Guitar Show.
Well, you mentioned artistic and MTV in the same sentence, and that's a little bit on the oxymoronic side. I
think they're all reality shows now. I think.
Yeah, who knows?
I haven't seen it for years. But anyway, so what I wanted to do was I also wanted to have this be a vehicle to go and go to like small guitar factories that build really nice instruments, and then to interview and play with interesting guitarists from all over the world, and because I'm very interested in how people from other other continents with a completely different kind of culture and history approach the guitar, because guitar is it's a tar, like the ektar in India is a one-string. Tar means strings, I guess.
And ek means one.
One, yeah. So the ektar, the one-string thing that they pluck like this, which is where I got this lick from. That's how they play the ektar with one finger. So you see, like a guy from Iowa can do that too. That's not a problem. If a guy from India can do it, a guy from Iowa can do it. So, because nobody's any different from anybody else except that we're all individuals. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to do. Now, this would your ambitions would fall perfectly within my old dreams of Tom's Guitar Show. You could correspond with this woman, perhaps do a phone interview.
I'd take it. I'd go to wherever. She's from New York, so I don't know. I get the impression she's probably in New York, but she could also be in Florida too. But I travel. I would love to sit down with her and.
Gee, man, if I have delusions of grandeur, if we had sponsors and grants, we'd fly you down there with a camera crew, but we won't be doing that here.
No, unfortunately. But to get the information is the main thing, whatever format. But it's something I'm, I have my Bollywood documentary that I'm still working on, but maybe as a post-documentary project that's on my horizon. And in the meantime, I can start doing some more research. And there was an interesting CD that had recently been released about Jewish Americans being involved with Latin music. And apparently there's a whole big it's a whole big thing that a lot of Jewish American musicians ended up doing Latin stuff. Edie Gourmet is another person who was actually quite popular down in Mexico, and she did a lot of songs in Spanish.
She was Los Panchos. She was. Yeah.
So Vicky Carr, is it? I think is that her name? She did some Spanish stuff. Of course, Linda Ronstadt is of Hispanic descent,
but she didn't speak Spanish. She's so too far removed, I think.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Just part.
Like,
she's just part.
Like the singer Selena, she was a Tejana, and she had to basically learn Spanish so she could relate to the Mexican and Latin American culture. But Edie Gourmet was also a Jewish American, and Abby Lane is a Jewish American, and there is one song by Abby Lane represented on that. But I had heard an interview on public radio about that, and. Apparently, it was quite a phenomenon. And Celia Cruz, who famous singer, and I think she's Cuban, is also Jewish. So there's a really interesting. That's the kind of wonderful mix you get here in the United States, where you get people from different cultural backgrounds. And they were talking that a lot of the traditional Jewish music, when you look at the keys and harmonies they use, is not that removed from what you would find in Latin music. And there's speculation that may have been the attraction. Plus also the fact that a lot of these people were on the urban East Coast, where there were a lot of Spanish speaking people.
Right.
And just to break into showbiz, they did gigs singing Spanish songs and
I
stuff.
think a lot of people were. There always have been a lot of Jewish musicians. I mean, in this country ever since the Jewish influx. I mean, they're really good musicians, and you'll find. I mean, just when I was a kid in the orchestra, or whatever, there are a lot of Jewish kids in the orchestra, and you're looking for a gig, and you get whatever. You know, this Latin thing was very popular, and it comes and goes in popularity, but there's there's a whole. Like, I mean, Cuba's never been very far away, and then and the. I mean, and then the West Indies, I guess they're most English speaking, but there's this whole this cross pollination back and forth. The thing about the blues is they say, well, the blues is not indigenous to Africa. People have tried to make it so, but the musicologists, the word is musicologists can't really find it. You have to really use a stretch of the imagination to think that it's African. But what it is the African American music. Cross-pollinated with a lot of European American music with Native American music, because there's a lot of mixture of the native population and the black population, and of course the white population, plus all the ships being unloaded from the West Indies, the Caribbean, whatever, South America, because the ships, port city, New Orleans, and a lot of ships, would be unloaded, so. And then people, hanging around with each other. So there's all this stuff together. But then the Jewish thing is interesting. I've always, because I listen to klezmer music and so forth, and I've read the biographies of various famous Jewish musicians and so forth that were like recent immigrants, and like Benny Goodman, because his parents were immigrants or whatever. But so there's a clarinet tradition, for instance, in klezmer music. But then if you you have some sort of klezmer musician or somebody who maybe stops dressing up quite so Jewish or whatever and tries to pass, and you get a gig in a band and you're playing jazz, but you bring your accent to it, because I hear so much of the clarinet, really wild clarinet stuff. It sounds similar to klezmer music to me. I hear the same licks in the old jazz and stuff like that, and so I mean, it's just this amalgam. And I find it quite interesting. I don't have any real research to back it up. I have read, though, about the blues and the jazz and so forth being very heavily influenced by the West Indies. Also, and I was interested in a few weeks. I'm still interested, but I was reading up a lot on Irish slavery and how ethnic cleansing, about 200 years of. I misspoke on the show. I said 300 years for some reason, but 16-something to 18-something. There was a lot of deporting Irish, and they would, sometimes people, like in revisionist history, call them indentured servants, but they were actually slaves, and they mixed with, and they were actually crossbred with, I guess, the black Africans, and there were there are a lot of people now who live in the West Indies who are much lighter in skin color than Africans necessarily, but they're if you check their DNA, they're a combination of the Irish and the African, and so it must have affected the music and the culture.
Yeah, wow,
quite a bit. And
because both have strong musical cultures and like to make music, and it's going to blend.
Right, and a lot of those people moved to the U.S. After the liberation, basically. A lot of the Irish and a lot of the mixed race people have moved among us. And there's also interesting things about those people from the West Indies who are immigrant populations, and they tend to fare really well too. I mean, economically and so forth, they do better than a lot of the people the African Americans who've been here for centuries. The more recent immigrants, and Malcolm Gladwell was talking about this phenomena, that there was a factory somewhere in New Jersey or someplace that was near a housing project, and they were unlikely to hire anybody from the housing projects. But they had a lot of people who were genetically similar to the people from those, like part, European and part African, but they were actually immigrants from the West Indies, and that they fared very well. They said that they have the good black people and then not good black people for hiring in the personnel department. So he goes and interviews people and whatever like that. But there's this whole culture that's, grew up out of an African-Irish mixture in some of these countries, Trinidad or someplace. But long and strange, you know, and all this stuff must have affected culture and music, and so I find it very interesting. I mean, sitting here, I'm not a musicologist per se, but
Well, and to cut to the quick, we've got a lot of topics to cover on future
Yeah.
shows.
the show's probably almost over.
Yeah, I gotta check the time.
Let's see if it's. How are we?
Oh, we're over.
Is it over? Well,